There is a pattern in failed container gardens, and it almost never starts with bad soil or bad timing. It starts at the garden center, in the annual section, where nothing on the shelf was ever designed to return. I replaced the same 4 pots 3 springs in a row before I understood what was actually happening. What I am about to share are 15 perennials that survive in containers, come back stronger each season, and ask almost nothing in return. One of them actually deteriorates when you pay it too much attention. That one changed how I think about container gardening entirely. Before the first plant, one thing matters more than anything else on this list: your USDA hardiness zone. 2 gardeners can buy the same plant on the same day and get completely opposite results based on where they live. Zone ratings will appear throughout this video. Know yours before you act on any of it. The pattern most container gardeners fall into is not laziness. It is the annual replacement cycle: buying, planting, watching things decline by August, pulling them out, and starting again next April. That cycle costs real money every single year, and the plants driving it were never built to do anything else. Perennials break that cycle permanently. They establish roots the first season, and use those roots to return stronger every season after. The container becomes an investment instead of a subscription. Plant 1. Sedum. Most gardeners kill sedum slowly with kindness. Premium potting mix, regular fay, retializing, consistent watering, all of it works against this plant. Each sedum leaf stores water in its own tissue. It is not waiting for you to water it. It is managing its own supply. Established sedum has been documented surviving 6 to 8 weeks of zero supplemental water and recovering without permanent damage. Rich soil produces tall, floppy growth that looks nothing like the compact, structured plant you bought. The fix is simple: lean soil, minimal water, zero fertilizer. The plant rewards that restraint with better color, tighter form, and cleaner structure than any well-fed sedum you will ever grow. Autumn Fire holds deep copper-pink flower clusters from September through November and stays upright in containers without staking. Dragon's Blood stays low, with red foliage that deepens as temperatures drop and fall. Matrona grows tall with burgundy stems and dusty pink blooms, the kind of container plant people assume was chosen by a professional. Zones 3 through 9. Sedum grows as a cold, hardy perennial requiring no winter protection whatsoever. In zones 9 and 10, afternoon shade during peak summer heat is the only adjustment needed. Water deeply once at planting, then every 2 to 3 weeks through summer. When temperatures drop and fall, stop completely. What the plant does with the cooling temperatures will be the most interesting thing happening on your porch. Plant 2. Lavender. The bag that reads Premium Moisture Control is the fastest way to kill lavender in a container. Lavender evolved on rocky Mediterranean hillsides with almost no soil nutrition and minimal moisture retention. That premium mix holds exactly the conditions lavender cannot survive. The correction takes 5 minutes. Mix your standard potting soil with 1/3 coarse perlite or horticultural grit. Use containers with minimum of 3 drainage holes. Remove saucers entirely. Never place one under a lavender pot. That combination makes lavender nearly indestructible in a container, which the standard setup never could. Hitcoat is the most cold-hardy English lavender available, surviving reliably to Zone 5. 4 Gulf Coast gardeners: Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. Phenomenal handles heat and humidity better than any other variety and performs dependably across zones 6 through 9. If fragrance is a primary goal, Grosso carries a higher concentration of essential oils than any other and blooms continuously from June through August. Do not fertilize lavender in a container. Not once, not all season. Rich nutrients produce soft growth with almost no scent. The essential oil concentration that creates the fragrance and the natural insect-repelling properties increases when the plant is slightly underfed. Neglect is not just acceptable. Neglect is a technique. Place the container exactly where you spend warm evenings and brush the foliage as you pass. The oils release immediately. Natural insect deterrents and 4 months of fragrance from a 5-gallon pot. No annual plant produces at return. Plant 3. Russian Sage. Russian sage performs better in a container than it does in the ground. Not equally well, better. The contained root system produces more compact, upright growth than open soil ever allows. Gardeners who experience both never go back to ground planting. Once established, Russian sage blooms continuously from July through October. For months of blue-purple flowers on silver-white stems. Most flowering perennials offer 4 to 6 weeks of color under ideal conditions. Russian sage gives 4 months regardless of conditions. No pest pressure. Deer avoid it. The aromatic foliage naturally repels insects without spray or treatment. After blooming ends, the silver stem structure provides genuine winter interest when every other container on the street looks bare. Zones 4 through 9, Russian sage requires exactly 1 maintenance task per year. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February or early March. 30 seconds of work. In return, it returns fuller and more floriferous than the season before. In Zone 4, move the container against a protected south-facing wall before hard freeze arrives. In Zones 8 and 9, Russian sage often behaves as semi-evergreen, keeping its silver structure through mild winters without any additional input. Plant 4. Hens and Chicks. This is the only container plant that multiplies on its own schedule and hands you the results. The mother rosette, the hen, continuously produces smaller rosettes called chicks around its outer edge. Each chick is a fully independent plant. Separate with 2 fingers. Drop it into a fresh container with minimal soil, and it establishes without fertilizer or attention. The mother hen blooms once after several years, then dies, but by that point, she has produced enough chicks to fill multiple containers several times over. The plant replaces itself and expands your collection simultaneously. Cobweb hens and chicks is covered in fine white threads across the rosette surface that stop people mid-stride. Red beauty transitions from green to deep burgundy as temperatures drop in September, peaking in November, a plant that looks completely different at the end of the season than it did at the beginning. Pacific blue ice produces blue-gray rosettes that visitors instinctively reach out to touch to confirm they are real. Zones 3 through 8. These plants evolved in the Swiss Alps and Carpathian Mountains, on exposed rocky ridges with scorching summers, bitter winters, and almost no soil. Your neglected container is genuinely luxurious by comparison. They thrive in containers as shallow as 4 inches, ideal for windowsill planters, wall pots, and small balconies where deeper containers are not practical. One thing determines whether a hen produces dozens of chicks or almost none: drainage. A hen in a cramped, poorly draining pot directs every ounce of energy into survival. A hen in a well-draining container with room to spread directs that energy into reproduction. Container setup makes all the difference, and the specifics of that setup appear in the final section of this video. Plant 5. Catmint Walker's Low. The most commonly purchased container plant in America is a petunia. Petunias require deadheading every few days, weekly fertilizing, and complete replacement every spring. Catmint requires 1 trim per season. That is the full maintenance list, and it blooms for 6 straight months, while petunias are struggling to reach September. Walker's Low produces continuous blue-purple flowers on arching stems from May through October. Butterflies are strongly attracted. Visible wildlife activity around your containers all summer without planting anything specifically for that purpose. The foliage releases an herbal scent when brushed that most biting insects find deeply unpleasant. Color, wildlife, and natural pest deterrents from one plant that comes back every year without replacement. Walker's Low is a benchmark, award-winning, 18 to 24 inches tall, the most reliable catmint for American containers across nearly every climate zone. Cat's Meow is more compact and self-cleaning, blooming without deadheading. The right choice for smaller containers or gardeners who want even less intervention. Six Hills Giant is larger and more dramatic, the right anchor for a substantial pot on a front porch. Zones 3 through 8, Walker's Low is fully cold hardy. In Zones 8 and 9, afternoon shade prevents foliage burn. When the first flush of flowers starts looking tired in July, cut the entire plant back by half. It looks severe for about 10 days. Then it returns with second bloom flush that is frequently heavier than the first. Gardeners who skip that single cut lose 6 to 8 weeks of color every summer without understanding why. Now they know. Plant 6. Hosta. Hostas are more beautiful in containers than they are in the ground. Not equally beautiful, more beautiful. Containers eliminate slugs, the most destructive force in hosta ground plantings across America. Containers eliminate the drainage problems that cause root rot in poorly managed soil. Containers give you complete portability. Move them to your best display location in summer. Move them protection before hard freeze. The container does not compromise hostas. It gives them conditions the ground cannot provide. Some in substance produces enormous chartreuse gold leaves up to 18 inches across that glow and shade as though lit from the inside. Nothing else in a shady container arrangement produces that visual weight at the same price point. Halcyon has powder blue foliage that is naturally slug resistant and stays clean all season without intervention. Patriot has deep green leaves with crisp white margins that look deliberate, like someone designed this plant for exactly this container. Zones 3 through 9, one of the widest cold hardiness ranges of any shade perennial available. In zones 3 through 5, move containers to protect a wall or unheated garage before hard freeze arrives. In zones 8 and 9, morning sun only. Afternoon shade is non-negotiable for keeping foliage clean through summer heat. A hosta in a well-managed container does not need to be replaced. It divides naturally every few years. Separate into 2 or 3 plants. Move them to fresh containers. A single $4 purchase produces enough material to fill 8 containers over 10 years. That is a mathematics of perennial gardening that annual gardeners never get to experience. Plant 7. Coral Bells Heuchera. Most people place Heuchera in deep shade and spend the entire season wondering why the color looks dull. Deep shade is the wrong placement, and the correction takes less than 5 minutes. Move the container to where it catches 2 to 3 hours of gentle morning light, not deep shade, not full afternoon sun. 2 weeks after that adjustment, the color saturation will be obvious enough that you will wonder why nobody mentioned it sooner. Heuchera comes in burgundy, silver, lime green, caramel, orange, and near black, more color range than most flowering plants, and that color is present from the first warm day of spring until hard freeze. Palace purple produces deep burgundy leaves that appear almost black in certain light. One of the most dramatic foliage effects in container gardening at any price. Lime Ricky is electric chartreuse that illuminates shady corners the way no other plant can match. Caramel produces warm amber orange tones that shift visibly throughout the season, looking genuinely different in April than in September. Zones 4 through 9. In Zone 7 through 9, Heuchera stays fully evergreen. 12 months of container color and structure without a single additional task. In Zones 4 through 6, the foliage may flatten during hard freezes, but rebounds cleanly every spring without intervention. Plant 8. Astilbe. When people see Astilbe in bloom, they assume it is difficult. The feathery plumes look like something from professional florist arrangement, and that visual elegance suggests an equally demanding level of care. That assumption is wrong, and containers actually make this plant outperform any ground planting in the same yard. In the ground, Astilbe depends entirely on whatever moisture the surrounding soil holds. In a dry summer, ground-planted Astilbe struggles. Plumes come in smaller, bloom period shorten, foliage looks stressed by July. In a container, you control exactly what the plant receives. That control produces bigger plumes, longer bloom periods, and cleaner foliage than open ground planting under identical conditions. The container is not a compromise for Astilbe. The container is an upgrade. Bridal Veil produces pure white plumes that glow and shade with elegance that stops conversations. Fennel has deep red flowers rising above dark bronze foliage, one of the most dramatic color combinations in shade container gardening. Sprite is compact, shell pink, built for smaller containers, and has won more awards than almost any other Astilbe variety over the past 3 decades. Zones 3 through 8 fully cold hardy, returning every spring with more flowering stems than the previous season. Unlike most drought-tolerant perennials on this list, Astilbe genuinely prefers consistent moisture, which containers make straightforward to manage. After blooming ends, leave the spent plumes standing through fall. They transition to a warm russet brown that provides genuine container interest well into November. Plant 9. Lamb's Ear. The less water you give this plant, the more spectacular it becomes. That is the biological reality of a plant that evolved on rocky, sun-baked hillsides in Turkey and Iran, where rainfall is scarce and survival depends entirely on the plant's own systems. The dense silver-white hairs covering every leaf are not decorative. They are a precision survival mechanism. Those hairs reflect intense sunlight to prevent the leaf from overheating, and they trap a thin layer of dry air directly against the leaf surface to slow moisture loss down to almost nothing. When you overwater lamb's ear, those hairs flatten against the leaf, trap moisture instead of air, and the plant rots from the outside in. The damage looks like neglect. The actual cause is too much care. When you underwater it, the hairs stay upright, stay silver, and the plant becomes more visually striking with every week of drought. Neglect is not a mistake here. Neglect is a correct technique, and the science behind it is one of the genuinely interesting things in container gardening. Big ears produces leaves up to 6 inches long, the most dramatic variety for container display, and the one that generates the most unprompted questions from visitors. Helen Von Stein rarely produces flowers, directing all plant energy into producing silver foliage. The right choice when pure visual impact is the priority. Silky fleece is smaller and more compact, ideal for mixed container arrangements where a silver accent is needed without a dominant presence. Zones 4 through 8 reliably cold hardy across that entire range. In zones 9 and 10, afternoon shade is necessary. The hair system manages intense sun effectively, but extreme heat combined with high humidity exceeds what this plant was built to handle. Place lamb's ear next to almost any other container plant, and it does something those plants cannot. It invites touch. People reach out and brush it without thinking, every single time. That tactile quality, combined with the silver coloration, makes it one of the most commented on plants in any container garden. And every bit of that is achieved by watering it less than anything else sitting on your porch. Plant 10. Bergenia Winterglow. Most American gardeners have never grown this plant. Most have never heard of it. That gap between obscurity and performance is one of the more useful things in container gardening, because once you know what Bergenia does, the empty containers you've been looking at all winter start to feel unnecessary. In spring, Bergenia produces clusters of pink flowers before most other perennials have broken dormancy, sometimes while frost is still visible in the early morning. Through summer, thick, glossy leaves provide bold container structure that holds through heat and wind. In fall, those leaves begin transitioning to deep burgundy red as temperatures drop. In winter, the evergreen foliage holds its color and form while everything around it looks abandoned. Winterglow is the most cold, reliable option available. Deep burgundy winter color, clean pink spring flowers, and 4-season performance that justifies every square inch of container space it occupies. Bressingham White delivers clean white spring flowers above glossy foliage, among the most elegant Bergenia options available. Baby Doll is compact with soft pink flowers, the right scale for smaller containers and gardeners working with limited porch or balcony space. Zones 3 through 8, Bergenia tolerates deep shade, drought, poor soil, and temperatures well below zero once established. In zones 3 and 4, the winter color display is actually the most dramatic of all. The coldest temperatures produce the deepest burgundy tones, and the contrast against frost or snow in January is something most American container gardeners have never seen from their own porch. Bergenia containers that have gone unfertilized since planting, watered only when remembered, still flower reliably every spring before any other container in a yard has been touched. That is the baseline this plant operates at without being asked. Plant 11. Black-eyed Susan Rudbeckia. One mature black-eyed Susan produces between 80 and 120 simultaneous blooms at peak flowering. Not over the course of the season, at one time. Standing in front of a container with that many golden yellow flowers open at once against dark centers is a color impact that is difficult to replicate with any other single plant at the same price point. This plant performs better in its second year than its first, better in its third than its second. Every season the root system strengthens over winter and pushes out more flowering stems than the year before. A plant purchased this spring will be more impressive next summer, and more impressive still the summer after. Most things in a garden do not compound that way. This one does. Gold Sturm is the benchmark. Award-winning, reliable, compact enough for containers, blooming continuously from July through September. Prairie Sun has yellow petals with green centers, a fresher, more contemporary look that stands apart from the standard variety in any container lineup. Cherry Brandy produces unusual copper-orange tones that set entirely apart from every other yellow flowering perennial on your porch. Zones 3 through 9, across that entire range without complaint, leave the seed heads standing through fall and winter. Goldfinches, chickadees, and house finches feed on them actively from October through February. Your container becomes a wildlife feeding station that costs nothing to operate after the plant is established. Most gardeners cut everything back in October and wonder why the birds stop coming. The seed heads are why the birds come. Leave them standing. Plant 12. Ornamental Grass. Karl Foerster. No other container plant looks intentional in January. Every other pot on your street in the middle of winter looks abandoned. Karl Foerster looks like someone planted that way. The upright stem structure stands clean and deliberate through frost, through snow, through everything winter sends from Zone 4 through Zone 9. Spring brings fresh green vertical structure back to the container. Summer develops the characteristic wheat-colored feathery plumes that move in the lightest breeze and produce a soft sound no other container plant generates. Fall transitions the entire plant to warm gold, while seed heads feed birds through the cooling months. Winter provides a standing architectural presence that makes a porch look considered rather than neglected. For complete seasons of genuine container interest from one plant that requires one maintenance task per year, Karl Foerster stands narrow and upright at 4 to 5 feet. The most architectural container grass available and winner of the Perennial Plant of the Year award. Morning Light has fine silver-edged leaves with a graceful arching form and soft pink plumes in fall. More delicate and elegant, the better choice for gardeners who want movement rather than strict vertical structure. Blue fescue forms compact blue-gray mounds at 10 to 12 inches, perfect for smaller containers and mixed arrangements where a low accent is needed. Karl Foerster is hardy in zones 4 through 9, Morning Light in zones 5 through 9, blue fescue in zones 4 through 8. Cut ornamental grasses back to 4 to 6 inches in late February. That is a complete maintenance requirement for the year. One task, 5 minutes. Then watch it return taller and fuller than the season before. Plant 13. Coneflower Echinacea. Native to American soil. Documented by the National Wildlife Federation as one of the top 5 bird-feeding native plants in the country. Blooms from June through September with minimal deadheading required. Self-seeds into surrounding containers, providing free plants every season without any action on your part. Seed heads left standing through fall and winter feed goldfinches, chickadees, and house finches from October through February. A container that earns its space in every single month of the calendar year without being asked. Magnus Purple is a classic. Larger flower heads in the wild species, a more upright habit and reliable performance from Maine to Texas. White Swan is pure white with orange centers and slightly more shade tolerant than purple varieties, a clean and elegant option for gardeners who want something beyond the standard color. Hot Paprika produces double orange-red flowers, the most dramatic modern coneflower variety available for American container gardens. Zones 3 through 9. In zones 4 and 5, place containers against the south-facing wall during the coldest weeks of winter. In zones 7 through 9, bloom season extends well into fall with proper deadheading, giving southern gardeners significantly more color per season than the standard bloom window. A coneflower purchased this spring self-seeds, feeds wildlife through winter return stronger next year, and never once asked to be replaced. Calculate honestly what you spent last year on plants that did none of those things. That calculation is uncomfortable for most gardeners. It should be the last time it needs to be made. Plant 14. Hellebore Icen Roses Series. Most American gardeners spend winter staring at empty containers. Hellebore gardeners spend winter looking at flowers. That difference costs exactly the same amount of effort, not approximately the same, exactly the same, and yet most garden centers stock their shelves with plants that disappear by October and leave nothing behind until April. The hellebore sits on those same shelves, and almost nobody picks it up because nobody explained what it actually does. This plant blooms from December through April, the longest single bloom period of any perennial available to American gardeners. Flowers come in white, pink, burgundy, yellow, and near black. Evergreen foliage provides 12 months of container structure. Thick, deeply divided, glossy leaves that look architectural year-round. The flowers emerge and hold through temperatures that kill most other plants entirely. A hard frost that wipes out everything else on your porch does not slow a hellebore down. Ice and Roses Red produces deep burgundy flowers from December through March, the most dramatic winter container plant available in the American market, and the one that generates genuine surprise from visitors who cannot believe something is blooming in January. Wedding Party is pure white double flowers that bloom from January through April, an elegance in winter containers that no other plant at any price point honestly replicates. Penny's Pink delivers soft pink with darker veining throughout each petal, one of the most refined hellebore options available. Zones 4 through 9. In Zones 4 and 5, place containers against a protected south-facing wall during the coldest weeks. In Zones 7 through 9, bloom season extends from November through April. 5 full months of winter flowers from plant that asks for almost nothing in return. Plant 15. Japanese Painted Fern. Every standard green fern in a container looks exactly like what it is. Japanese Painted Fern looks like something pulled from a professional designer's arrangement and placed in your container on purpose. The care requirements for both plants are completely identical. The visual result is in a different category entirely. That gap, identical effort, dramatically different outcome, is why this plant closes out this list. The silver and burgundy coloring on each frond looks hand-painted. It is completely natural. It requires no special treatment, no particular fertilizer, and no specific technique to produce. And a shady container arrangement. It adds a metallic, almost luminous quality that makes everything surrounding it look more intentional, more considered, more designed. No other plant on this list does that specific thing in shade. Burgundy lace has the most pronounced purple tones of any painted fern available, the most dramatic option for anyone who wants maximum visual impact in a shady container. Ghost is nearly pure silver, almost luminous in deep shade, and one of the most visually striking foliage plants at any price point. Pictum, silver gray with a burgundy midrib running down each frond, is the classic variety that performed reliably in American container gardens for decades without disappointing. Zones 3 through 8. This fern dies back completely in winter and returns reliably every spring with more fronds than the previous season. Do not cut the old fronds back in fall. Leave them standing through winter. They provide natural insulation for crown through hard freezes, and removing them too early exposes the plant during its most vulnerable period. Wait until you see fresh growth pushing up from the base in early spring. Then remove the old material. That timing protects the plant through everything winter sends, and it costs nothing but patience. Those are the 15 plants. But every single one of them can still fail if 3 things are wrong in your containers. And these are the mistakes that end more container perennials in drought, cold, and neglect combined. Number 1. Drainage. The leading cause of container perennial failure across America is not underwatering. It is overwatering combined with inadequate drainage. Roots sitting in waterlogged soil cannot access oxygen. They suffocate and rot from bottom up, and by the time the damage shows in the foliage, the root system is already beyond saving. Every container needs a minimum of 3 half-inch drainage holes. Add a 2-inch layer of coarse gravel at the base before adding soil. Remove saucers from all drought-tolerant varieties on this list entirely. Water should drain visibly within 15 to 20 seconds of application. If it pools longer than 30 seconds, the mix is too dense. Number 2, container size. A perennial in a 10-inch container needs water every 1 to 2 days in summer. The same plant in a 16-inch container needs water every 3 to 4 days. The same plant in a 24-inch container needs water once to twice weekly. The minimum size for every plant on this list is 16 inches in diameter. In winter, small containers freeze solid. A perennial in a 10-inch pot in Zone 5 has almost no insulation between its roots and a hard freeze. The same plant in a 24-inch container has a thermal mass to protect roots through temperatures that would destroy them in a smaller pot. Container size is not just about summer growth. It is about winter survival. Number 3, soil mix. Standard garden soil is too heavy. Cheap potting mix holds too much moisture against roots. The correct combination is 50% quality potting mix, 30% coarse perlite, and 20% compost. That drains well, holds enough moisture between waterings, and feeds slowly through the season without synthetic fertilizer. Each spring, remove the top 2 inches of soil from every container and replace it with fresh compost mixed with slow-release granular fertilizer. 10 minutes per container, once per year. That is a complete annual soil maintenance for every plant on this list. Number 4, winter positioning. Most gardeners leave containers sitting exactly where they spend the summer. A container on exposed concrete or open decking loses heat through the bottom as fast as it loses it through the sides. Before the first hard freeze, move containers onto insulating surfaces, thick rubber mats, wooden pallets, or dry straw spread beneath the pot. In zones 4 and 5, cluster containers together against a south-facing wall. Group containers share thermal mass. A cluster of 5 16-inch pots maintains root temperature significantly better through a hard freeze than 5 pots placed separately across an open porch. That one repositioning takes 15 minutes and can be the difference between 15 thriving perennials next spring and 15 replacement purchases next April. That is what changes when you stop treating container gardening as a seasonal subscription and start treating it as something that compounds. The plants exist. The setup is straightforward. The results come back every year without being asked. The only thing that needed to change was knowing which 15 to start with. If any part of this was useful, subscribing is the simplest way to make sure the next one reaches you. Drop in the comments which of these 15 you are adding to your containers this season, what state you are gardening in, and one plant you spent money on last year that did not make it a fall. Those answers shape what comes out of this channel next.